Hello and welcome to episode number 2 of the Hacker Dialogues. This is the second episode in about 5 months, so sorry about the delay there. But we're going to try to do it monthly now, as I said previously. But we're going to make it actually happen this time. We decided instead of just trying to make it happen on site, like we had originally planned, we just did this one over GoToMeeting, which ended up working out really nicely. So in this episode, you had the original crew from the very first episode. You have Derek Banks, myself, Bo Bullock. You've got Craig Vincent, you've got Woody Gates, and you also have an additional member. We brought on Jose Rodriguez for this one, which was a lot of fun. We ended up talking the majority of the time about the OSCP program because Derek is currently going through it. That's also known as the Pentesting with Cali program, and some differences between it and real world pen testing. Additionally, we talked about creating our own CTF, which was a lot of fun. Some of the troubles that we went through. We talked about some various, vulnerable VMs you can go grab right now from like VulnHub, Hack2Box. We talked about timing attacks on web applications. We talked about Netwars Tournament of Champions because Jose just won it, which is really awesome. And then at the end, we talked a bit about AV bypassing and a little bit about some obfuscating PowerShell to get past various antivirus products. So all that and more, check it out. Here's a riff.
I don't have a super secret project. My super secret project is
that your Satoshi Nakamoto?
OSCP. Dude, I wish. Like, somebody told me today that they had a friend who bought a bunch of Bitcoin a couple of years ago when, I don't know, like $30 a piece or whatever. They have 788 Bitcoin right now. Like, damn.
Nice.
Yeah, I should have probably paid more attention to that.
This is a friend of yours.
It's one of those things where it's like when it first came out, I was like, that's a waste of time. Then like I was looking at buying some and I was like, they're $200 a piece. That's too expensive. And now I'm looking at like,
yeah, now you're looking at it's like 19 grand a piece. And it's like,
right.
I don't think it's going to go down. Well, I mean, I'm sure like anything, it's going to fluctuate, here and there.
If it drops below 10K, I'm going to buy some. I don't care. I'm going to buy some.
I think I'm just going to keep I'm going to set aside a little bit of money every paycheck and just, buy whatever the cash equivalent is and look at it like a 401k, right? I mean, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, whatever. But
so I was looking at, they're at like 16 billion or 16 million or whatever the top amount of Bitcoin is. It's a order of magnitude, but they're at 16 or something right now. It's going to cap out at like 21.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to probably try to get some before that and then hang on to them until it caps out and see what happens, right?
When it caps out, it's going to be the year 2140. So if you're around then.
I plan to be. I plan to be.
I think you got something better than Bitcoin.
The power usage that it takes to mine them is going to get too high that people can't do it anymore.
Whatever. We'll just all do it. We'll do what Joff Thayer does, and we'll just make a solar-powered Bitcoin mining rig. His solar power unit doesn't mine Bitcoin that I know of, but I know he can power his home office for a day or something. But no, my super secret project is to work on the OSCP. So I just renewed my lab time because my first round at lab time I really sucked at working on it because hacking things for a living for during the day, and then the kids stuff and actually trying to go to the gym and things like that. There's only so many hours in a day, so I have all of Christmas break to at least get started on it.
I honestly really need to pick one. You can't really work on your skills and be fit at the same time.
That's a good point. So what you're saying is I should hack and drink beer and then take a couple of months out of the year and actually work out and just hope it all evens out somewhere.
So there is truth in that, and I've recently got out of shape, but most of that is because I've spent so much of I've been working and not necessarily on things security related, and then doing a lot of this stuff on my free time. And there was about a 9 to 12 month period where I did not go to the gym or work out at all, and it killed me. It just killed everything. So you've got to find a work-life balance.
Yeah, you got to find a balance of getting like your health in line to make sure that I guess like I'm kind of like I have to work out in the morning to get ready for the day. You know, like I feel like that's the thing that motivates me to work harder during the day and get more done. You know, but at the same time, like there's plenty of days where I wake up and I'm like, no, I got to get to work like now to make sure that I get this done fast, and that totally eliminates any working out for that day. And, you know, if you get on that habit, that can be, I don't know, pretty...
Actually, that's what I was going to say is I listened to an audiobook called The Power of Habit, and I listened to it while I was running and getting in the habit of running, right? And, you know, I'm still working on, like, schedules and, being in, a routine, and travel really sucks for being in a routine.
Oh, for sure.
You guys were, saying earlier, like, wait, you're on vacation, you're going to run. Yeah, because if I stop running for the 3 weeks of my vacation, then I won't go back. And I already paid for the half marathon race entry fee, so it ain't going to run itself.
Might as well be ready, right?
may as well not, really suck, right? Actually have a goal to work on. So OSCP.
Let me here before you talk more about the OSCP. I guess I should intro this whole thing again. So this is Hacker Dialogues episode number 2. We've got the same crew. Sorry, this has been what has it been, like 5 months or 6 months since the last one?
Well, there were 2 times where we were going to work on it.
Yeah, we totally plan on doing it at DerbyCon. We plan on doing it at WoW Was Hackin' Fest. But you know what? It just didn't work out. We didn't have time to do it.
Well, I know what happened at DerbyCon.
Yep, we all know what happened at DerbyCon.
That was bourbon, totally bourbon's fault.
That's probably the right answer.
Totally bourbon for that. At WoW Was Hackfest, it wasn't bourbon. It was that was crazy, and being part of Black Hills there, doing the CTF, doing a talk, interacting with everyone. I didn't have any spare time. There was no downtime. All my downtime was sleeping.
So we literally had somebody request
going on during Hackin' Fest also.
Yes, there was, and I did partake in it, but not to the extent of DerbyCon. I didn't have time. I did see a lot of other people, and especially the folks that did our CTF that apparently stayed up to 4 o'clock in the morning. Which
is awesome.
Right? Yeah, right. I have to make a better CTF next year.
Yeah, seriously. So I mean, we I don't know, we've talked about doing it. So now we're we actually had somebody request on Twitter to when's this episode 2 coming out? When's it gonna come out? You've been talking about it coming out for a long time now. Well, let's just do it remote. I guess that's the best way to do it for now.
To my surprise, somebody actually listened to the damn thing.
It's crazy.
Go figure. So I guess I'll take stuff, since I'm taking the train to ShmooCon, and a couple of us are going, I'll take stuff, and we can figure it out. I'll bring the microphone and a laptop and stuff, and we'll give it a shot. We'll see. But
are you promising that, Derek? That we're going to do one at ShmooCon?
It's a promise.
Promise? No, that's a strong word. I'll bring stuff and we'll see what happens.
Do it on the train.
As
long as we don't sit in the quiet car.
Yeah. But then we don't have Bo, and the Wi-Fi is not going to be good enough for.
No.
So we could try it there. We could try it sitting in a hotel room. Too bad we should have tried to con John into getting a suite to do the podcast, right?
Yeah.
That's an afterthought. That's a good one. But worst case scenario, Derek, I'm going to make you record one on the way home on the train if we don't do one at ShmooCon.
All right, fine.
Because we're gonna see things at ShmooCon that are going to be worth an episode, I think.
Yeah, that's actually true. But yeah, as we were talking about the OSCP, so it's interesting. I just started. The methodology, reading through their document versus applying it to what I do, as a professional pen tester. It's neat seeing their take and then trying to work through that versus what I normally do. And yeah, there's some interesting stuff. So far, all I've really done in the lab was sort of reconnaissance in the public network, right? Like, so I've just done some scanning, done some web service enumeration, try to figure out what machines are what. And I think so far in 2 days worth of work, I have like 3 shells. So when I say 2 days, I don't mean 2 whole days. I mean after work or in the evening, spending a couple hours when the kids went to bed and drinking beer and trying to play around with it and read through the document and kind of work along. But I think at least a few of us, like 2 of you at least, I don't know, but the rest of you guys already have the OSCP. So, for everything I've read so far, it's a whole lot of don't overthink it, right? Like I just looking so far, I think I found a couple places where there are default credentials, and that certainly happens in my actual regular pen testing
life. Oh, for sure,
right?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Sadly,
all the time. Sadly, yeah.
Or just, shitty credentials in general.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I just my last gig before going on vacation, the client was heavily instrumented against spearphishing, which I see that all the time now. Like, oh my God, spearphishing! Let's put FireEye in place. We have some kind of endpoint solution, right? And then I look on the external, and they have a single-factor OA portal. And they have an 8-character minimum password policy, and I just from the outside can start reading people's email. I mean, okay. I mean, I'm glad you have all these things in place, but for the love of God, from the outside, everybody who has the password of fall 2017, all 200 people, like I can read all their mail.
Sure, you can.
Oh yeah, there's even a tool for that.
Mail sniper.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I guess that's the thing is, try, and when I, make the point, hey, it's great you have all these things in place, and those mitigations don't mitigate your weak password policy, right? They mitigate spearphishing. That you put FireEye in place doesn't mean that your weak password policy can continue. So.
Yeah, I had a similar situation recently where it was a just a generic Citrix portal that I was testing. And like that was like the main focus of this test I was on was like, can you find any vulnerabilities in this like third party software, Citrix? It's like Citrix, like what am I gonna look for besides like password spraying? Like, I mean, I could go set up like I don't know like a Citrix server and try to like find a 0-day in Citrix or something, which takes time, huh? Yeah, but yeah, I only get 1 week. Yeah.
I laugh because I had a client one time basically do that with Docker. Here's a week. We expect you to find a 0-day in Docker. What?
Yeah. So I did what I would normally do. I tried to find like bad password choices for users and found some. But what was interesting is I found that they actually were using like a 2-factor setup for their users. But I mean, I found out through an interesting way. Like I found out by basically like when I would log in, I would get like a 60-second delay before it would like redirect me to like failed login on certain users. So I was like, that's interesting. I wonder what that is. And then I did it again. It was like 60-second delay, failed login. And eventually I was like, that must be like a push notification or something, right? Or like they're calling the 2-factor is like calling the user to like give them their 2-factor portion. So I took the same credential to like their VPN portal, like just a standard like Cisco AnyConnect portal, log straight in single factor. It's like, okay, so you got 2-factor on Citrix over here, externally facing, single factor AnyConnect VPN portal right into your network. I don't get it.
And you can use that delay on the Citrix to identify valid users, right?
Well, valid credentials, yeah. No, so to identify valid users, Citrix actually has an error code that I found that it will they have a series of error codes that gets set as a cookie, like on anytime you log into it. So like if you go log into a Citrix portal, you'll get like an error cookie that comes back. It's like 4009 for like just a generic invalid login, 4007 for like user not found, that kind of thing. So like you can do username enumeration against Citrix based off of like this error code that you get back in a cookie. And then based off of that, like you can develop a user list of valid users, then go password spray that list. And then, you know, like, yeah, if it's two-factor, whatever two-factor they're using for it, you get the delay.
So is that something that Citrix is aware of, is like information leakage?
That's a good question.
Do they care? Or
They know now.
It's a good thing.
They know now, yeah, but
like we use the Fortinet client, and if somebody tries to log in, they just get a -445 error, and it can be for, you know, expired password, using the wrong portal, the account doesn't exist, you know, any number of things, and they get the same error message, and so then we have to decipher what is actually wrong with their account.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, they're using the wrong portal, but
Well, what you're talking about, Greg, is you know, the timing thing. A lot of things that are connected to AD that are facing external, you can use timing to infer valid users. I know we had an engagement a long time ago. Concur, like, you know, software for travel, like billing your travel. We found we were able to do that kind of thing against Concur. So I think anything that's facing external, that's not two-factor, that is tied to AD, is probably susceptible to that. To some kind of enumeration via timing of a request. But so
there's definitely been a lot of login portals that I've hit that have been AD related that don't have that specific vulnerability. I don't know. It's been a lot like hit or miss for me. Like, have any of you other guys done a lot of like web app assessments at all? So Jose? No, nothing.
No, not really.
Jose's done at least a portion of web apps in the Tournament of Champions, because I know that in
we're gonna get to that momentarily.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, right. But
Yeah, no, but
well,
seriously, no, like
at least somebody on that team did some web app stuff. I know that where I got stuck the last time I did Netwars, the Star Wars theme Netwars, the advanced web app questions. So Jeff McJunkin, if you're listening, those were hard.
Yeah. So the timing attack thing is something that I always check for username enumeration, because it's one of those things that you figure that if you have like a piece of software that is checking a backend database for something that is valid or isn't valid, that should take some period of time different than whether or not like it's just a random user that doesn't exist or not, you know.
So the scenario that you were talking about when you started this, you were saying that the Citrix thing would take 60 seconds to go do something.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, it's taking 60 seconds because it's doing something. If they wanted to try to do like pure obfuscation, they would make it take 60 seconds or the same amount of time when it failed.
Right.
But you're taking an extra level of requirements going into the development process.
Exactly, dude. That's all about the SDLC part, and this comes back to like the exact same thing that happens whenever we look at this type of attack against like Microsoft OA portals, because you can do this against like OA right now. Like you can go username enumerate against OA portals because of the timing differences in a valid user versus an invalid user, and you would think that all it would take is either some randomization in the response time that's coming back to the person who's logging in to like make it not look the same, or just make everything like a blatant like late response to cover how long it takes to actually return the value. Because like let's say it takes like 400 milliseconds for an invalid user, but it takes 4,000 milliseconds for a valid user. Just make every invalid user 4,000 milliseconds or 5,000 milliseconds. And you have something that kind of creates this blanket line across that wouldn't make it as easy to identify those values that are there. But you know what, that the problem with that is like you now have a software developer who makes it slow to actually return like a login, right? Which that's something that developers worry about. Like everything has to be fast, you know. Like nobody wants to wait 5 seconds to log in.
You're thinking like a security person, not like a developer.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
If only we had some developers.
It's going to be like, why does it take me 5 seconds to log in all the time? And why isn't it fast?
Exactly. But that's part of the attack lifecycle. That's a main part of it, because I mean, if I can't identify valid users, that takes away a huge part part of that attack.
Come on, 2 out of 5 people on this on this hangout or have some level of development experience now. Come on.
Now,
allegedly,
yeah.
How are you finding valid users? Because I mean, everybody uses different naming schemes, right? So like, it might be first name,
That's a good question.
Great question.
initial, last name. What if it's full first name, last name, last name only?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways.
That is a topic that could probably take the rest of the call.
I'll keep it short. So the primary way that I would go about doing it is first looking in metadata of publicly available files. So going to like a certain domain, like let's say we're attacking, site.com. I would go to Google and say, I want to find every PDF or every document file that lives on site.com. Pull down all those files, pull all the metadata out of them, and look for usernames, first of all. Because a lot of times they don't scrub them. Like you have like a marketing person or accounting person that has created some piece of data that ends up like in a PDF or a Word document that gets posted to a website, and they don't scrub the actual usernames that are like in the metadata. That's the easiest way to find them, right?
Yeah.
Because they're literally like built into like the metadata of file. So you go strip those out. You now have like the actual the username scheme. The other way to do it is through basically doing the timing attack, but brute forcing different username schemas with common names. Or even names that are of employees that work there. So like you go and grab like a list of like, let's say it's John Smith. So now you try J Smith, John.Smith, John Smith, John.S, John S, that kind of stuff, right? Where you have all the different variants and watch the returning times and see if any of them have any sort of differences there.
You can get your hands on a dump of any one of these, big breaches.
Oh yeah,
at whateverdomain.com and see what the usernames look like. That'll give it away right away.
Well, so that could be the email address, right? But the email address isn't always the username.
Yeah, just go to LinkedIn, and see if they have their email attached to that. That's easy win, right?
Yeah. So LinkedIn scraping. So Jose, to your point, I routinely use the LinkedIn dump from 2012 to validate email addresses.
Oh yeah.
It is almost always that someone's work email is in there. But there's a third way to get usernames, internal usernames too, and that's phishing.
True.
So if the other things don't work, I can probably send enough phishing messages over time or phishing emails over time where I can set up a fake page where I'll get somebody to put in their internal username. Because a lot of the time, I'd say at least half of the engagements I've been on this year, the internal username scheme was not first initial last name or initials or something like that. It was a letter and a series of numbers or just a series of numbers or whatever.
That gets so interesting.
Yeah, I mean we've used ID codes like your employee numbers, your Windows login.
Yeah. So that's really not that is not effective to stop a determined attacker. It's just not. Like all it does is so when I'm on engagements and I find that say I'm on a red team and like Bo and I have been on 3 red teams this year where it wasn't like first initial last name, it was some series of stuff, and it's like a game, right? It's like a CTF challenge. There was one where it was just a series of numbers and we metadata and then we basically used, I don't know, I think I used Crunch on one here recently, but just generating, the amount of numbers and the pattern, and they're like, oh, look, I found one. And it only takes one, because once you get into the OA portal, like just saying it's an OA portal, then I can go get the whole gal.
Yep.
Because generally it's an alias, and your username's an alias field in the gal. And now I have all the usernames, and I can relaunch my whole spraying attack.
So that I want you to go back and repack that. You said you used Crunch to generate a number of IDs, and then sprayed that.
Yeah. So an engagement I was on recently, they had an external OA portal, and I found through metadata what looked like a letter, and then say 3 numbers after that, as there were 4 or 5 in the metadata, and I make an assumption that's a username. I've seen that enough to where I think it's a username, and then I use Crunch to go 1,000 on either side of some of the numbers that I found, generate 10,000 variants or whatever, and then spray that as the list and look at the timing, or use Mail Sniper. Like you can either use Intruder or in Burp, or use Mail Sniper, and then do the password spraying there. And only once ever have I had a company actually detect OWA password spraying. It's only happened to me one time. And coincidentally, apparently, the person got the mail for the alert when they were actually in one of John Strand's talks about password spraying, which I found amazingly awesome.
Do you know what tools they were using that actually detected it?
They had a third-party monitoring service that was looking at logs, and so on the topic of third-party monitoring services, only about 10% of the time do they catch an attacker. Well, I shouldn't say that. Only 10% of the time of I know that there's a third party in play. Do they catch us? There's a couple of third-party providers that seem to be pretty good, which I won't say on this.
As long as you're not sending naughty words, you're good.
Yeah, that's right. Oh God.
We didn't tell the story last time, did we?
No, and that's not a story. That's a story that we should tell over beers, so it can be more fun, in person at the bar. Not that would ever happen.
I guess. Well, there's a short version, right? The short version is that.
Okay.
We were caught by the third-party monitoring company because we were sending test data out of a network that had potty language.
It was, it was all of the ID10 codes.
ICD-10 codes, yeah. It was ICD-10 codes. We were trying to do a healthcare thing, trying to send out ICD-10 codes, but they caught bad words because there's body parts in the ICD-10 codes.
Yeah.
So anyway, but nothing else. The 280 AV alerts we set off on purpose. Nope.
In the span of a minute.
In minutes.
or the time where we basically denial of service their entire network because we were using Responder, and they had their proxy was NTLM authenticating, and for some reason, nobody can get out to the internet every time we ran Responder, but we got a shit ton of hashes. They didn't catch that. They also didn't catch the C2 we had out of their network for a while. Yeah, no. But bad words. That's what caught us. Yeah.
Hey, Craig, check your audio.
Oh,
yeah,
we lost Craig's audio.
Can't hear Craig.
Yeah. You gotta watch out for those language filters.
Yeah.
I screwed up. I was on mute. So I think we got here by talking about OSCP. So do we want to circle back to that?
Oh, yeah. Let's circle back to the
OSCP.
Because I mentioned enumerating web services, apparently.
That's what happened, yeah.
Yeah, no, so on the OSCP topic, I haven't made it very far at all. I'm still on the public network. Yeah.
So what do you think so far of the materials? What do you think so far of the course? Because I know, actually before we got on, I know Craig has done it. I went through it back in 2012. Jose has worked on it. But Jose, you said that you had a baby mid test or something.
When I scheduled it, I literally booked it to start 6 weeks before the due date with a 12-week window because I was like, oh, it'll be perfect. I'll have 6 weeks off. I'll go do that. And then I got about 26 boxes through, and I had a baby, and I did not log in again.
Yeah, well, that happens, man. Babies mess stuff up, man.
I will say, if you got 26 boxes through, you're probably ready for the test, based on my experience.
Yeah, but I was doing OSCP for the fun of it, not for the test. So,
I'm gonna buy more lab time just because my take on OSCP is every box is a lesson, and unless you do all of them, you don't get all the lessons. But I will go onto something that Derek said, is that it's very much about exploitation. And like he said, he's been working for Black Hills doing stuff for so long, you don't really exploit that many things. it's kind of a different kind of mindset and skill set, and that's one thing that I found. So the way I broke into security was I did OSCP, and then I applied for a job on a red team, got it, started doing it, and I realized that I don't use hardly any of this stuff. Like I use some of the privilege escalation stuff is definitely important, but a lot of the exploitation stuff we try to stay away from as a red team because it's noisy. You're gonna crash stuff. Like it's
I mean, kind of mindset. So what's the definition of an exploit? Like, so I've actually had a client call me out for doing like, you know, taking advantage of weak passwords, and I think
that is not an exploit. No, and so there's a lot of that stuff in OSCP, but like I'm talking about actually exploiting like services and
exploiting a piece of software and not exploiting a condition or exploiting something in architecture or exploiting a configuration. Like, I guess I have a broader definition of exploitation, right? Like I agree with you that when people think about an exploit, they think that there is a flaw in a piece of software, that I have some, you know, research that I've done and I've written some shell code and I can remotely take some kind of action, right? But a broader definition is that all your users have really crappy passwords, and I'm taking advantage of that, and that's the exploit. And so I haven't in the OSCP even gotten to the exploitation part yet.
Yeah, and in general, most of the boxes on the OSCP, well, on the Pentesting with Cali course, don't have weak passwords. Like it's pretty much set up so you can't crack anybody's password.
Yeah, no, I from what I've read so far, I've gathered that, and like the 3 boxes that I was on, I mean, yeah, I haven't written an exploit yet.
So Craig, like from what you're saying though, like like you said, like how the same thing that I've echoed is like I haven't used a lot of like the exact skills, I guess, like that you learn in that course. Like I haven't had to sit down and like literally like write an exploit for any piece of software. Like in the entire time I've been in.
I kind of want to defend Greg's point because I kind of see whenever you hit a box and you're presented a certain scenario and a certain situation where, hey, I found an exploit or I found a way in by doing this, and it was unique to this scenario because somebody had crafted it up, and it was actually pretty interesting to do. If you were ever in a scenario like that again, your brain will jump there really quickly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right?
And I think more importantly, it comes down to like, I hate to say it, but it's that trademark try harder terminology. You know, like dude, they break you into thinking that you will find a way into these boxes. Like there's nothing you can do. You have no help, but you know there's something you're missing, and you have to get in. And dude, this is the thing that I always echo with like CTF infrastructures. And Jose, you know exactly what I'm talking about because like you're the king of CTFs right now. like literally the king of CTFs.
No, Jose. Yeah.
Like, I mean, so Jose, like, I mean, when it comes to somebody who hits a wall in what they're working on currently, like let's say they're on a pen test and they think that they can't do anything. Like there is a mentality that people who go through the OSCP have, and people that do CTFs, they know that there is a way in. It's just a matter of time, and it's a matter of figuring it out.
So, but I generally approach all of my tests at Black Hills with that in mind. But like one of the limitations is how much money clients are willing to pay, right? Like, so let's say like the example I used earlier was we had a client that wanted us, like literally they wanted us to find some kind of 0-day in Docker, right? And given a week of time, that's a pretty tall order for me. I don't know about other folks, but like for 1 week with a report, like finding a 0-day in Docker, that was kind of tough. But taking the product aside, let's say that I have an unlimited amount of time, and there's an organization that I want to get into, and they have some level of surface area. Maybe given that amount of time, that's the equation, right? Is how much time is willing to be spent.
Your example specifically is kind of messed up because vulnerability researchers spend 3 to 6 months on one software product.
Sure.
They get exploits, but they spend tons of time. Pen testers work 1 to 3 weeks, and you're supposed to be looking for, broad range, all the low hanging fruit, clean up their house. Exploiting a software product is completely kind of.
No, I agree 100%. It's not something that was going to be possible, and it wasn't.
I was trying to defend you too, because that's not you. Most people can't exploit something that has no problems in.
No, I mean it was a security assessment, and I feel like we did a good job based on like what the statement of work was, but and talking with the client, that's kind of what the level of expectation was like, hey, but I'm with you. Like, there's a difference between being a pen tester and then doing research to find a vulnerability in a product, because you have to spend a lot of time like looking at that kind of thing. And I feel like that's the overlap with the OSCP, versus like what I do as a pen tester is, like, if there's one box on the OSCP that I know there's a way to get into, if it takes me 3 weeks to figure that out, then I've learned a lot about how to go about it in that 3 weeks, but maybe that's not exactly what I've been doing as a pen tester.
And I haven't been in it since 2012, so it's definitely like could have changed since I've been in it. But from what I remember, it wasn't as though everything was connected as your typical like AD infrastructure would be connected. Like whenever I did it, it wasn't like you have like every single box is part of the same domain, or every single box is part of the same forest even. Every single box is very much different, and I mean, sure, Craig can probably like add to that, but was it different? Like, does it feel like they're unique hosts that you're like have a specific goal for?
Yeah, no. So it's all about different boxes, and like I said, each box is a different lesson, and it's all about exploitation. There's some things where they've got different networks so you can pivot into. It's about some of the post-exploitation pivoting, some of that stuff.
Some of the pivoting use similar accounts, right? Let's not give too many hints, right?
Yeah. So it's pivoting into different subnets and stuff, and doing some of those things to go after the other boxes. But the primary thing is learning lessons about exploitation, and something that I've learned going from that was my intro, right? Like, that's how I got into this, and then I went into a red team. And I found out that we don't use a whole lot of that stuff. It's all about kind of exploiting the same kind of things that Derek's used to exploiting, where it's like, weak passwords. As soon as you get a foothold, and they don't teach you like Windows domains and OSCP. They don't teach you that. You get a foothold, and you've got a lot of options from there that you don't learn in that course. It's mostly about misconfigurations and finding things that are exploitable.
So to kind of like add on, I think what Bo was asking was specifically like, is it like a real engagement or simulated engagement? But what it looks more like is that every box is a single CTF target, and even though you might use one to pivot into another, there are no lateral movement with credentials. So you won't be doing pass the hash or like AD lateral movement.
So I remember
exactly. Yeah. So a lot of things. So a lot of things you would do in a normal, actual, real-life engagement where you get a foothold on a box and like pass the hash or any kind of like domain exploitation, like you're not doing OSCP. That's not what they teach. They teach kind of the external, kind of host-based stuff. There's some valuable like privilege escalation stuff in there, but it doesn't really emulate what you would do in kind of a modern environment.
Yeah, but in all fairness, if I started it this week and found that it was exactly what I was doing as a pen tester, I would have been very disappointed.
Well, yeah. If it was exactly like we were doing, you had popped a single web server and they would have been running like fucking like IIS as like a DA or some shit.
Yeah, right. Or
like, that's real world for you right there.
or my favorite thing at the moment, and this is my absolute favorite attack scenario at the moment, is I have some foothold in an environment and I Kerberos and then get crack a Kerberos ticket, and then that service account is DA like that. I think that's happened 4 times to me this year. not led to DA, but it was just DA. I mean, if that was the attack vector, I would have been disappointed, right? I mean,
yeah, no. So they teach you things that I feel like I want to say it's the harder stuff, but it's the stuff that I'm more familiar with. But the post exploitation stuff is stuff I've been focusing on lately, and it's very mechanical, very process oriented. I mean, like we have things like Bloodhound and Death Star, right? I mean, it's once you're in, right? And there's some endpoint protections and some other mechanisms that you have, but OSCP is very oriented around the actual exploitation and prevest. That is their main focus, is finding misconfigurations from the outside on the host and exploiting it and then escalating privileges. And I think they do a really good job.
That's a valuable skill. No, I really think it's going to be fun. And we'll see what happens in about a month from now. When you see me at ShmooCon, I'm curled in a fetal position from the OSCP.
Well, I know it's not exactly the same as the OSCP, but I really enjoyed creating challenges. Like for we did the Wild West Hack and Fest CTF, Derek and I, and that was so much fun. Like just working on the process of creating challenges, and I don't know, like we went through so much process of talking about like what is too hard versus what's too simple. How simple should it be? Like how much should we give away? Like it was such a process, and like that whole thing was just so much fun. Like
the hardest thing was creating simple stuff. Like after doing the CTF, I have so much respect for CounterHack and its SCOTUS and that whole, like their whole thing, and like seeing like where the first Netwars I did was in 2012 with Bo, actually.
Yeah.
And seeing where they were there versus where they are now is amazing. Like they have so much skill in like running the gamut of someone who is very new to it and wants to learn and still has a great experience versus someone like Jose who needs a little bit more of a challenge, right? And so that's probably a good segue into, hey Jose, why don't you tell us about the Tournament of Champions?
Well, I wanted to say one last thing about OSCPs. There's probably a lot of people that are out there that have done the OSCP already. I heard from friends that have taken it recently and have taken it before that they recently changed the lab network. So if you've done it already before and you wanted to get some more boxes, they introduced a bunch of new ones. So it's worth doing again. Awesome. I just kind of wanted to mention that because that's cool. That's
great because like I said, like I took it back in 2012, so I'm sure that's before they updated it, so that'd be awesome.
And no, I'm also I plan to take more lab time in my free time just because I did not finish the lab. Like there's so much to do that I didn't do, that there's lessons to learn that I've not yet gone through. So it's something that I'm interested in going in and doing. So I would say
we've lost people.
Do it.
They're leaving.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, when I took the OSCP, it was like towards the beginning of like my whole getting into InfoSec, and I didn't know what to expect. So like I literally spent a lot of time going through all the labs, thinking that the labs were actually why you would take OSCP. And then after like a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that, I got into that. I was like, oh, when you're done, you actually go do the labs, which is why people do OSCPs.
Yeah.
It's not because of the part where you're doing step-by-step reading and doing little things here and there.
No.
It's really about open range targets with no hints.
No, like honestly, like the guide, like the PDF they give you is just like here's an intro to a bunch of shit. Now take that and go to the lab and figure other shit out.
Right, and so somebody gave me some advice going into it. A guy, Steve Campbell, Derek knows him. He gave me the advice: get through the PDF as fast as possible. Get through that thing, get all the information, use it as a reference later, because the real value is actually in the lab going after the machines. And
I'm telling you, I think if people are not ready for that or don't know what to expect and they're just not prepared to handle OSCP, I think the lab gives them this feeling like they got something out of it. Right? Like if you know nothing and you're not able to get past maybe 5 or 6 boxes in the lab, having gone through and actually done the lab, the follow through the process section, probably, taught you some stuff, and it probably got you some experience and exposure. So you might come away with it feeling like you got something out of it.
Have you guys used the VMs that people put on VulnHub to try and test against those?
So yeah, actually those are my preparation for the OSCP was a combination of Georgia Wyman's book, doing that kind of at home on my ESXi server, and doing VulnHubs. And that's a very, very good intro to that. If you can do those, then I feel like if you're comfortable with those, you're ready for OSCP. It's a very similar type.
Well, there's process. A lot up on VulnHub, right? Like there's how many are up there now?
Well, it's a lot more now. When I did it, it was a lot more of the kind of the hack me, crack me type thing. So VulnHub's gotten a lot bigger since then. But if you want to look at some of the metasploitable stuff like that, it's definitely a good intro. It's definitely worth doing. Also, I'm gonna go ahead and plug Hack the Box. Hack the Box, I think it's .eu now or .gr. Don't quote me on that, but it's one of those two. They do. It's very similar to the OSCP, where you VPN in and then there's a bunch of boxes. Hack the Box does have a kind of a web app style challenge to be able to sign up for it, but it's not that hard. Talk to somebody who's done it. But that's a very good intro for. Say you go like from a book from like Art of Exploitation to Georgia Wyman's book, and then VulnHub into Hack the Box. You get through that, and you'll be ready for OSCP. And honestly, some of the Hack the Box boxes are actually harder than OSCP.
I keep hearing some weird noises sometimes, but I was going to say, I'm kind of glad you went to where you went to. VulnHub is really good. They've got, like you said, the boot to roots. The problem, though, is that those tend to be more of a game than really like experience building in real life scenarios. People start posting things like port knocking or just having to derby like constantly, right? You like derby until you find some obscure folder, and then take that, make that maneuver, derby again and again. And so there's hit or miss with VulnHub. But I'm really glad you mentioned Hack the Box, because that stuff is just gold. It's really kind of like a free OSCP, and the quality is really, really high. I'm friends with a couple of the moderators that they put in a lot of work. So it's quite an awesome resource. If you haven't gotten to it, you should take
nice. Yep. Is that a free thing?
They let you launch for free.
Yeah, I know Hack the Box was free. I started doing it back when it was free for all the boxes. They've since retired some machines, and you can pay like a $10 per month fee to go back into the other ones. I honestly personally recommend the earlier boxes. Like I said, I've not done all of them. I've not done hardly any of them, to be honest. I've been too busy. But people I've talked to, the earlier boxes are more OSCP-like and more realistic. Some of the later boxes have been a little more kind of CTF type, second RV challenges, crypto challenges, stuff like that. But when I went into it for the first time, it was very much similar to the OSCP in terms of just, hey, there's some boxes and some services. You should enumerate those and find exploits and do that kind of thing.
So if you pay, they give you access to a kind of like a subset of VM machines that are running with less people on them. So when you play free, you are on the public VPN, public VM network that is sometimes really, really cluttered. But if you pay, you get, not necessarily your own cloud, but there will be like maybe 7 to 10 people as opposed to 200.
Nice.
So you're paying for that, and then they also unlock the retired boxes, which essentially is just boosting your score if you've done all of them, because your score goes up when you hack the boxes, and when the boxes get retired, you lose those unless you're a premium member, and then you keep those points. So it's kind of like a little bit of both. They kind of went.
Jose, do you know how much that is per month? Like, I've not subscribed. Like, somebody told me it was like $10 or $15 per month. It's not super expensive, right?
Yeah, it's cheap. I think it's either $100 a year or maybe $150 a year, something like that. It's not much.
Yeah. Shit, I'd rather pay that and DigitalOcean droplets that I forget about.
And new stuff's coming out all the time. I think there's like a couple new boxes to hit like a month. So pretty good.
Yeah, I get emails every week almost, it seems like, from them. But
Cool. So
I guess going back to Bo's point, when you guys are making CTF challenges, I've honestly heard from a lot of people that it's easy to make a challenge and it's easy to make a challenge hard, but it's really, really hard to make a hard challenge solvable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. So I know what you mean. So there were 3. So when we did our CTF, you could be an individual or teams. There were no restrictions on that kind of stuff, and there were either 3 or 4 of the competitors, teams or individuals, that solved everything. And I felt like one of the questions that I actually didn't develop and Bo didn't develop, it was one of my friends who developed based on a nation state actor that was ridiculous in my opinion. And there were I think 4 teams that solved it, and I felt like it was unsolvable. So I was really relieved on the last day when there were a couple of people who were like, yeah, I got it, right? So, and to those like folks that were told they were getting black badges, I promise you really are. Like, we get them eventually, as soon as we get them made. Figure it out.
Yeah, we gotta figure out how to make those, manufacture them. But we will.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen.
So I want to hear about the Tournament of Champions because I've never been there.
So let's assume that people don't know what we're talking about. SANS training organization, they put some really awesome stuff out there. I know Bo did I don't remember what podcast you did it for, but you gave a quick rundown on what Netwars was like.
Hack Naked. It was a Hack Naked one.
Okay, I watch a lot of your podcasts, so I get mixed up which ones are which.
Oh, thanks, man.
Actually, that's actually funny that you mentioned that because I'm pretty sure like the time Bo did that Hack Naked, we were in Orlando, I think, and it was when I met you. The first time I met you, Jose, was I think the one that Bo was doing the review on. Because you won that.
Yeah, it totally was.
And that's when I actually met you.
Was that 2 years ago or last year? I don't know.
2 years ago, because
3 years ago?
I think it was 3 years ago.
Wow.
I think it was 3.
I know this year I went to Netwars only just to facilitate for fun because
That's crazy.
Never mind.
I've had to cut back on my Netwars habit. I can only do it like once or twice a year now. Like it becomes a little consuming.
Right? Every time they roll a new Netwars, all the challenges are different. Everything starts over. And then in my mind, that's when like the challenge really kicks up. Because it's like now we're starting back at square one. No one else has seen it either, so I have to be the first to be the one to max the score out.
Nice.
Yeah. No, that's when I took advantage of that when 1 year at Virginia Beach they released a new one and no one had done it, and that was actually the one that I won. And like, actually I shouldn't say the one that I won. That was so that was 2015, I think.
Okay.
And
so that was 4.0.
Yeah, and so that was it just so happened I was in 575 facilitating, and which is the mobile the mobile device security course, right? And there were some Android questions, and so yeah, they kind of mimicked some of the stuff we were doing in class, so that kind of helped out a whole lot, right? And also to my advantage, I had, which might sound kind of funny, I had food poisoning that week, so I was facilitating. I had food poisoning. I was out of town. My family was in the hotel too, and so when I was at Netwars, I was still doing Netwars because I'm apparently insane, and I didn't drink at all because I was also running a half marathon 2 days after the course ended, and so I was drinking my body weight in Gatorade, and apparently this whole not drinking thing like led to me actually winning at Netwars, but then again, maybe not, because the next one I won was actually with Bo as a team this past year at Virginia Beach, and yeah, I was probably drinking then.
So Jose, was it set up any different than like a normal Netwars? Was there like multiple nights? Was it Longer times?
So Tournament of Champions is held at CDI. So CDI is just a standard 6-day course period. They do 2 nights of Netwars. I want to say it's probably the biggest one they've done. It feels like the room was enormous. They said over 350 people there.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I dropped the number 500 at one point in a conversation at a bar after hours, but I'm not sure what he meant by that. I know there was 112 returning champions, 20-something different countries. They went through the whole spiel during the presentation that they do for the returning champions during the luncheon. They gave us some shirts that are not very humble. A giant champion shirt. It just says champion as big as they can make it. They gave us a hoodie that says champion kind of subtly, and then Netwars equally large in the back. So you're helping them out. But the hoodie was nice.
Nice.
We walked around DC sporting the shirt and the hoodie, between the 2 nights of Netwars. So
that's cool.
Wait, there were shirts and hoodies?
Yeah, they doubled up this year.
Dude, nice.
I would have been wearing one, but I thought it was a bit pompous.
No,
I would have worn.
Dude, you got like the max score. Like you beat the game. Like
yeah, you have the street cred.
We've actually seen it twice. We saw it at Hackfest, which is kind of like a 1.5, as you get 3 nights worth of Netwars there, and then we got 2 more nights at CDI.
So this is still Netwars 5.0, right? The Star Wars based one.
Yeah. Like it just came out at Virginia Beach when you were there, or maybe I think it was Milwaukee. Was it? I don't remember exactly where, but it came out in September.
Yeah, no, it came out before Virginia Beach. It was so in the past they had released them at Virginia Beach, which is my favorite SANS conference. This was my 6th year going to Virginia Beach. I really like that conference, and not only because it's at Virginia Beach, Hilton. But it was put out before, but so Bo and I went to Virginia Beach this year, which was where the first one of these podcasts was, the first Hacker Dialogues podcast was made. We did the Netwars there, and we won as the team, or we were the team winners. And I got to say, I really like the trophy and coin thing a lot better than like here's some kind of gadget, although I still use the iPad a whole lot that I won a couple of years ago. I still have that thing.
My wife uses mine.
Yeah, I kept mine. So, but no, I really thought that the 5.0, like I was saying before, was better in the sense of not having a lot of gateway questions, and you're able to move around, and it's more fluid in what level you're in, and like being able to answer different questions. It's one of the complaints I had about Netwars in the past. And again, this is being critical. Now that I've made a CTF, I know how hard it is to do. But getting to a gateway question and banging your head against it and not being able to go any further is really frustrating.
So comparing Netwars 5 to Netwars 4, Netwars 4 took, I think 4 or 5 sit-throughs. And by sit-throughs, I mean like different Netwars events, right? So times 2 for each one, right? In terms of nights. That was a long time compared to Netwars 5. And the reason for that was because Netwars 4 had specific path that you had to go through. And if you didn't get that box, you didn't do anything else.
Right.
And there was a lot of, somewhere in the past, you might have come across a file on a disk, and then you had to go scour every file on every system that you own.
Those credentials that you might have gotten in the past, they might be good here.
Like the one that hung us up was there was a function in a Drupal database that had FTP creds in it. So when you dumped all, you didn't get the cred because you didn't dump the functions. Right? They just dump things like that. But 5 is very, very parallel. You can do a bunch of things at one time. You get your score will get all the way up to level 4 before you've even left the VM. So you have a lot of potential with just cranking out work on your VM box. There's actually some dev work. The people are going to hate me for not remembering the name. The Jarek challenge was a scripting kind of a writing code challenge. That was pretty fun. When you get to level 3 type challenges, you're already in level 4 in terms of your score. And that was just a ton of fun. They have a second scoreboard where you're going through and you're trying to do your cadet training. I remember when we first got there, just thinking like, all right, let's kick the tires on this box and see what happens. And you kick the tire, the whole box falls over. You know, it's like, oh, there's the creds and we're root. That was easy, you know. But they did it on purpose. There was like an easy and a hard for each box.
Yeah.
And the easy one was just like laughably, it's just enjoyable, right? Like you go like, let's go see what's going up, and there's the creds. All right, we're good.
Nice.
The other thing I liked was when you VPN'd out, that it wasn't a challenge to figure out how to do some like, you know, SSH magic with like, you know, at level 3 and level 4 and 4.0, like you had to use like SSH magic. I remember going from level 3 to level 4. I think I did it at Hackfest last year with when you were there, like for like 30 minutes trying to figure out what in the hell am I supposed to do here.
That's such a good lesson though, right? Like I didn't know that before Netwars 4.0 either.
You're right, it is, but there's probably a better way to teach it than me going, I'm going to throw my laptop across the room, right?
After the struggle,
it's real. But now they've made those transitions easier, I think, where you still kind of like can learn it, but I think it's easier. But maybe I'm lazy.
I feel like that's kind of, if you guys do C++ programming at all, I kind of feel like SSH tunneling to me is similar in how people approach pointers, right? When you first learn the program, people see pointers and pointers to pointers and triple pointers, and they just go, I don't know what the hell's going on. And you feel overwhelmed and you don't want to use them. But when you figure out how they work, it's honest to God, like you have instilled upon you a new power, right? Like I was using Beyond Compare, which is absolutely amazing diffing tool. And on my Windows box, I was looking directly at files that were on a machine 5 levels deep. And it was like they were sitting on my desktop. Like that was just amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, no, you do have a point. Netwars taught me SSH magic that I did not know. And I will say that I have used it like in actual engagements, like for work. Like it's things, they're useful skills. I still have yet to really use like, you know, some kind of netcat backpipe relay kind of thing in actual real world things. But hey,
well,
maybe I'm not old
I've actually used both of those in a real world dev environment.
Hey, I need to get this shit off this box.
Yep.
Yeah, not because you want
to. Like, yeah, well, I mean, I guess in all fairness, I have, maybe I shouldn't say I have not used, I have used Netcat to get things off of boxes in an actual pen test, but yeah, anyway. So,
yeah.
Well, I wish I could have, CDI is actually not that far from me. I wish it was a little closer. I would have came and hung out, but then, you know, 5-hour drive, 4-hour drive. It's not actually a commute.
I think I pretty much covered everything. Level 5, well, when you finish everything, there's, you know, the Death Star explodes. I don't want to get into there's some What, did you miss that part?
Yeah. Spoilers, man, spoilers.
No. There was a crowd of people who have never played it before, and Ed SCOTUS put it on the big screen. Like, nice. It's not a spoiler.
No, this isn't a Star Wars spoiler. This is sort of a Netwars spoiler. But I mean, you got to figure at some point. You know, I do like that they Star Wars themed it, because I actually just saw the new Star Wars tonight. So I took my girls. It was a good movie.
So you guys, whenever you get the chance to see it, they actually made their own paper mache or something similar Death Star and blew it up with like some firecrackers. It was
nice. I would expect no less.
Pretty funny.
I actually kind of half expected, you know, Godzilla to come in the room and like, you know, start stomping on it or something.
Nice. So guys, we're like almost an hour deep already, and we've been talking about OSCP and Netwars.
Well, I think Woody has a story about how they stopped Bloodhound. I want to hear that story.
Oh, well, I ran Bloodhound, a couple months ago to to prove to my superiors how weak our network was. And I was talking with one of the security guys a couple of weeks ago about it, how like it wasn't picked up at all. And he was like, "Oh, I think I saw something in our like antivirus logs about that." And so like he pulls up Symantec, and I'm the only hit for PowerShell Bloodhound and across our entire network. But it didn't set off any red flags. Like nobody emailed anybody about it. Just I'm in there as running it.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah, so maybe that's not a story about them catching Bloodhound.
Yeah, they didn't really catch.
That's it was logged. It was not caught, right? Like so, there've been a number of engagements I've been on in the past where, yeah, after the fact, the client came back and said, "Well, we saw this stuff." I'm like, well, yeah, it. Like I thought I said at the very beginning that if you see activity, like you have to tell me during the engagement because that's how incident response works, right? You can't tell me that you review your antivirus logs like weekly, and that's actually some kind of effective strategy for doing anything.
Yeah, that's on the same page as something similar where like multiple times like I've ran like various interpreter payloads like on a box out of Symantec, and it's caught like the actual transport, like the SSL connection outbound, but not the payload itself, right? And so it doesn't like create like a virus detection, but it creates like an IPS like log. It's weird. It blocks and it creates like a log.
Well, no, but it's so lame, right? Because it may have changed, but in the past, what I've noticed was it only called the HTTPS connection if you were using the built-in certificate, right? Like if it was using the built-in like pre-generated certificate.
Yeah, if you use anything like categorized or at all, like you're good.
Right. Yeah. Like, so if you just not even categorized, if you just generate like a
anything else set the default.
Anything that doesn't have like the random 6-character like name that's in the SSL certificate for the CN, right? I mean, so to your point, Woody, like so Symantec specifically in the past, when I want PowerShell to run and it's catching it, all I do is go into the PowerShell like to the script and like find and replace like a function name, and I usually like do something like find and replace function and name it Bob or Gus, and then take out Harmjoy's Twitter handle, and Symantec doesn't catch it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, so Symantec's funny. Like it won't notify our security guys about like PowerShell Bloodhound running, but I downloaded the Nexus Root Toolkit to root my Android phone. And as soon as I downloaded that, it sent off alarms, and like 10 minutes later, I have an email like, "Why do you have a rootkit on your computer?" And
well, you know, I guess it's just a rootkit for an Android. I mean, in all fairness, so I'm not picking on Symantec. I still have, I still think that antivirus is useful in the analogy of like, getting inoculated against a virus versus like, actually catching something new. Like, I mean, I still think that you should have AV, but you shouldn't expect AV to catch a determined attacker, right? So the other thing that I do a lot with, PowerShell, if I know a client. So now when I first get into an environment, so generally in a pivot type test, I'll look to see if they're logging PowerShell. Like I'll actually go see, like in the PowerShell operational log, are you logging PowerShell? Or if you have something like FireIHX or even Carbon Black or something like that, and I'll just assume that if you do, you're trying to detect PowerShell running, and I'll use Daniel Bohannon's invoke obfuscation. I actually had a client that was using FireIHX and was catching some of the PowerShell that I was doing. And I started using invoke obfuscation, and their alerts didn't fire after that. So I don't know if you've ever used invoke obfuscation, but if you actually look at the output of it, not real human readable stuff. So
yeah, but how do you tell a computer to catch that, right? So somebody's got to be looking.
Look for 50% backticks. Like I don't know.
Well, so he released revoke obfuscation at DerbyCon this year.
Yeah, it's still on my list of shit to watch from DerbyCon, which sucks because I was at DerbyCon and
I've got a question about that. Is that so? Let's focus on the actual payload stuff. His invoke critical after is, I think, is the most important thing for getting initial foothold, is because it gets rid of all the bad words in PowerShell, like IEX and the download string and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's more important for avoiding detection.
Yeah.
Even like the thing we were talking about earlier, the PSI, the image downloader, right? If you can avoid the actual foothold strings that are going to throw off or trip your AV or your endpoint protection, you're not going to catch that at all.
No, but it comes down to signature-based stuff, right? Like I've had, like, we do a type of test called command and control testing, where we'll go through a range of things to see like what you catch, right? And we have clients that, spend a lot of money and they'll catch things that are, default. Like if you look at PowerShell Empire, there's a default, PowerShell like string that launches, various payloads, right? But if you change that, then it tends not to fire. Mm-hmm. So I think you have a whole lot better chance of catching an actual attacker if you're not looking at actual, what's being fired versus like what's the behavior after after it fires.
Mm-hmm.
So, but did you get Bloodhound to run in your environment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It ran perfectly fine. Got great graphs from it. Very, very quickly. You could get pretty much anybody from user to domain admin. So
did that make an impact?
Well, I've talked with everybody, and after the new year, we should hopefully be implementing some things that will help mitigate that.
Like a 15-character password policy, 15-character minimum password policy.
No, I mean I think we have 8-character, but
yeah, that's still what we. So to me, Bloodhound was one of the most important security tools released. What was it, 2015? That it was really 2016 that it was released, right? So just now, now NIST has revised their password guidance, right? Like now 8 characters is not what NIST says to do. NIST now says, hey, make all your passwords for your users something really long but easy for them to remember, and only change them every once in a while, right? So that's only been recent guidance. So to me, like what Bloodhound should really highlight is that everything needs, every user account, every service account needs a really long password, because back to the original OSCP conversation, if you take away the whole weak password, thing, then it makes all of us try a lot harder, right? It makes an attacker try harder. It makes a pen tester try harder. Because in the environments that I've been in that have 12, 14, 15-character passwords, my life is a lot more difficult.
I mean, I would imagine it'd be difficult to password spray, because even just like a simple phrase could have slightly different spellings that you can't spray anymore.
Oh yeah, password spraying, specifically for that. I mean, the most successful password spraying that I always do is season and year or month and year. In fact, I just got domain administrator in my last engagement with month and year.
Okay.
November 2017, found a guy who was admin on all workstations. It just so happens there was domain administrators logged into workstations. Go figure.
And sometimes with that, even when you make your password length and complexity really hard, it's going to make your users sometimes be really lazy, right? So you're going to get things like password walks or keyboard walks.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, so to me, like, I would never, if I was advising an organization, which I do for a living, what I would say right now is just minimum 15 characters for your users, and allow dictionary words and screw complexity. Just 15 characters or longer. So that forces them to go past like most dictionary words, right? And takes away a whole lot of what I would guess as an attacker. And the other thing I would do is I would set up canary accounts to catch someone who is attempting to log in as all users, right? I would set up some accounts where if you try and log into it from any workstation, that's an immediate like incident response, like severity 1. I'm going to go find out like what's going on there. And actually, I got caught on an engagement here recently. There was somebody that we were doing our 3rd or 4th pivot test for, and what they started doing was any account, anybody who left, instead of deleting their account, they just turned it into a canary account. So if you went and got like all the users out of the domain, and you try to log into somebody who was no longer in the environment, that was
like so instead of terminating the accounts, they created alerts out of them.
Yeah, pretty much. And
which is kind of like a fun save switch too. Like if they try to come back and like log in or something, you know, like if they try to come back in the office.
This was logic I could not argue with, right?
I wonder if do you think they changed their passwords?
Well, I'm sure they did.
Because it'd be actually even more fun if they didn't change the passwords and then like just they're hoping for like an ex-employee to like walk back and log in to like, you know, fuck with the company or something.
No. But I mean, I think this goes to like, so pretty much like all the times at Black Hills that I've been caught as a pen tester, it's been with teams of people who have come up with creative ways or really even better yet, are just paying attention to stuff, right? You know, most of the engagements that we're on, like, you know, that people bought products or products have been bought to try and catch like attackers, and that's never really a good solution. Usually the teams of people, like actual folks, like I was caught here recently in an engagement because somebody caught my Let's Encrypt cert because they were looking at all certificates that were being used in their environment. And it was something that they had signed up for where they had a service that was reporting like all their web traffic, like here's all the certificates that are being used. And like it was heavily weighted towards like Let's Encrypt certs, and they caught me. And I thought that was really awesome.
That's interesting.
I mean, yeah, I thought it was a really cool approach. Like you're looking at the encryption certificates that are at the TLS and SSL certificates in your environment that are in use, and someone's paying attention. I can't argue with that.
I'm curious by what you just said. Like, are they actually able to tell that they're under attack, or just that something weird is happening? Because
just that something weird is going on, right? Like, so, you know, as an incident responder, as someone who's like monitoring an environment, like almost always the best way to go about it is to look at something that's anomalous and start pulling on the string, right? Like hardly ever if someone's, if an advanced adversary is coming at you, are they, you know, I think that you're going to have to look at behavior and things that are anomalous versus what's happening on your IDS, if that makes sense. So I just thought it was like a novel approach to like what was going on in their network. They were looking at like the encryption certificates in use. And so, like, you know, I've done similar stuff in the past in Bro, right? Looking at like short tail and long tail analysis, like looking at the top 10 things in my environment in terms of like web traffic or URLs versus the single, you know, the short tail of it, like the single occurrences, like the least top 10.
I've been caught by things that are there. It's very much anomaly detection. It's based on we saw. They said that they saw a frequency of requests to a certain domain that was outside the norm, and it was coming in even though we had our own, you know, jitter and kind of our own kind of timing things set up. They were like, yeah, we saw some requests that they were repeated and regular, and they were able to detect a pattern, and they called us and they're like, yeah, no, we're going to shut that off.
So I think that's an advanced kind of thing, right? That's actually what what Rita does, right? Like what the Black Hills Rita project does, is it takes all this traffic and looks at it as buckets, right? Like over an hour time, like if you have a domain, like a given domain, if I have 1,000 requests to subdomains in that given domain, like that's odd, right? Like if I have evil.com and there's a random string of characters like as a subdomain for evil.com over the course of an hour, and I'm the top hit over in traffic in terms of that hour. So it takes a person looking at that stuff, right? I mean, you have to have someone, like to Jose's point, right? Like you have to have someone who says, oh, that looks weird, let's go take a look at that and see what's happening.
I think this is a combination of things. It was kind of a combination of automation saying, hey, this is new, this is different, it's anomalous. And then somebody came back and manually looked at it and said, yeah, no, that's not good, and then shut it down.
No, we've had some of our SQL admins get pissed off at the security guys because of stuff like that. We'll see emails go out, be like, oh, we detected this, manual like SQL job that's backing up or exporting stuff out of a database at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Do you know why this is going on? And they don't realize that they're running algorithms in the background of to detect if that's actually supposed to be legitimate traffic or not, and just get upset that they're getting flagged and called out on stuff like that.
Well, guys, I think it's been a pretty good episode. I don't know what you guys think, but I mean, for over an hour, I think it's good.
Are we gonna call it, or we have more topics? Or
I think we should. That? I mean, dude, we're gonna be at ShmooCon next month. We have some topics to talk about. Let's not preempt the topics.
Let's not burn them all right now.
Let's not burn them yet. Let's save them, and we'll talk about them then. But I think for now, this has been an awesome episode. Let's I don't know, say bye, I guess.
All right.
What do you guys think? Unless you have anything burning you want to talk about right now. Jose, anything?
Oh, man. Cool.
No? Derek?
No, I just think that we should do this at least once a month in 2018.
Definitely. Let's make it happen. Because, dude, if it's remote, we can't have an excuse for that, right? I mean, if we're just doing it like this.
Yeah, but doing it live with whiskey is usually better. So we got to try to make that happen too.
True.
I agree. So I think that what we need to do is so the first time I met Bo at the conference, it was at the World Marriott in Orlando, Sands 2012.
Mm-hmm.
John and Paul did a podcast from the bar. So that's probably what we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
A podcast from the bar.
I like this idea.
I'm down.
We might not have video, but audio is okay.
Audio is okay for podcasts at the bar. And then, especially a place like, Wild West Hackfest or ShmooCon or, DerbyCon, it ends up being a whole bar, which actually might be kind of fun.
That'd be awesome. Be loud.
People getting through.
Be able to bring some other folks in for sure. I would expect.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to figure out how to make that happen.
All right, guys. Well, whoever is listening, thank you so much for listening in to Hacker Dialogues number 2. We're gonna try to get a new one out next month for ShmooCon. So we'll talk to you then.